When we speak of ancient China, we often envision grand palaces, legendary warriors, and sophisticated art. Yet, beneath this facade of glory and cultural brilliance lies a darker tale, an era where individuals were bound not by choice, but by the chains of slavery. This vast civilization, renowned for its great dynasties and inventions, also bore witness to times when the brutal subjugation of humans was commonplace. But how did the oppressed live, and more importantly, survive under such tyranny? Welcome to Uncharted History. Today, we will look into the secrets of horrific punishments and unspeakable treatments inflicted upon the enslaved souls of ancient China. As our journey into ancient China's grim history continues, we stumble upon a haunting practice: tattooing and branding of slaves. Around the late Qin and early Han dynasties, approximately in the 3rd century BCE, a system to permanently mark slaves took root. Think of it not as the artful tattoos we admire today, but as a harsh tool of oppression. Slaves would be forcefully branded or tattooed, often with characters revealing their status or owner's name. The permanent marks ensured that a slave, once marked, remained forever trapped in the gaze of society as someone's property. The process was agonizing. Heated metal branding irons, glowing from the flames, would be pressed against the skin, causing not just immediate pain, but also leaving lifelong scars. These burns were reminders of a life not led by choice, but by force. As for tattoos, they were not done with the precision and care of today's standards. Needles dipped in ink were repeatedly jabbed into the skin, etching pain with every puncture. These marks, however brutal, told stories. Stories of lives taken, of identity suppressed, and of the stark power dynamics of the times. For a slave, this wasn't just a physical scar, but also an emotional and psychological chain, a lifelong sentence without parole. As hideous as they sound, were commonplace punishments for slaves, particularly during the periods of the warring states in the Three Kingdoms, roughly from the 5th century BCE to the 3rd century CE. Imagine, for a mere mistake, having your nose severed or feet amputated. The sinister logic behind such punishments was twofold. By cutting off a slave's nose, their disfigured face would broadcast their offenses to the world, a visible label of their misdeeds or lower status. Amputating feet, on the other hand, had a more practical cruelty. It ensured that escape became a near impossible dream, with mobility brutally snatched away. For those subjected to these mutilations, the repercussions went far beyond the initial pain. They became outcasts, often shunned even by fellow slaves. Daily tasks turned into insurmountable challenges. More than the physical pain, the psychological torment of being visibly branded for life, constantly reminded of one's inferior status, was a burden too heavy for many to bear. Moving from the chilling tales of mutilations, ancient Chinese history takes an equally bleak turn when we examine the widespread use of stocks and cages. It wasn't uncommon during the Jin dynasty, around the 4th century CE, to see humans stripped of dignity, caged like animals, or confined in stocks. These were not mere tools of restraint, but instruments of public humiliation. Locked for days, sometimes even weeks, these unfortunate souls suffered in silence. The physical torture of being restricted in movement, battling hunger, and bearing harsh weather conditions was only the beginning. Every passing glance from a passerby, every mocking jeer, deepened the psychological wounds. One such account tells of a slave in Luoyang who, accused of theft, was caged at a bustling marketplace. Day in and day out, his torment became a spectacle, a warning to others about the severe consequences of stepping out of line. As we venture further into the obscure depths of ancient China's punitive measures, we encounter one of the most harrowing methods of all: Ling Chi, often referred to as death by 1,000 cuts. Emerging prominently during the Song dynasty in the 10th century, this technique was not just an execution method, but a public spectacle of excruciating pain. Ling Chi involved making multiple calculated cuts on a person's body, ensuring that death came slowly and agonizingly. Every cut was a dance with death, a prolonged torment, keeping the victim alive to experience each cut's searing pain. It was a punishment designed not just to kill, but to degrade, to utterly annihilate one's spirit before claiming the body. Historical accounts detail instances where slaves accused of crimes such as conspiracy or revolt met their tragic end via Ling Chi. One famous account from the Yuan dynasty speaks of a young slave named Li, falsely accused of plotting against his master. His public execution, drawn out over hours, was an open message, a brutal assertion of dominance by the ruling elite. While the practice eventually waned and was officially abolished in the early 20th century, the echoes of the victim's agonized screams were a chilling depiction of the extremes of human cruelty. Another very common punishment, less graphically visible than Ling Chi but equally devastating, was the curse of relentless labor. Forced labor, stretching beyond human capacities, was the shadowy backdrop against which many slaves lived, and often prematurely died. As early as the Qin dynasty, around the 3rd century BCE, vast numbers of slaves found themselves thrust into the jaws of ambitious state projects. The Great Wall, one of the most iconic landmarks of China, stands today as a prime example of human ingenuity, but also to the countless lives spent in its construction. Slaves, malnourished and exhausted, would carry heavy stones up steep terrain, all under the unyielding gaze of their masters. Another brutal sector was the mines. Beneath the surface, in the stifling, dangerous confines of copper and salt mines, slaves would work hard for hours on end, their only break being the brief moments when their weary bodies collapsed from fatigue. This ceaseless labor took an inevitable toll. Malnutrition, skeletal deformities, and respiratory diseases were rampant. Historical records from the Han Dynasty indicate that the life expectancy of a slave laborer was tragically short, with many not seeing past their 30s. A haunting quote from an ancient scroll reads, "They built, they dug, they broke, until their spirits were buried long before their bodies." Indeed, for many slaves, their back-breaking labor wasn't just a means to an end, but a slow, grinding end of their very essence. Our narrative takes an even more somber twist as we dive into the realm of religious and cultural rites. One of the most chilling aspects of ancient Chinese rituals was the use of human sacrifices, and tragically, slaves often found themselves as the unwilling offerings. As far back as the Shang dynasty, around the 16th century BCE, tombs and burial sites bear silent witness to this unspeakable practice. It was believed that offering human lives appeased deities, ancestors, or natural forces. Some thought that these sacrifices fortified city walls or blessed new palaces, ensuring their longevity and protection from malign forces. Others saw it as a way for deceased nobility to retain their status and servants in the afterlife. The ceremonies were as grim as their purpose. Slaves, often drugged or bound, would be buried alive with deceased royalty, their breaths snuffed out in dark, claustrophobic tombs. In other rituals, they'd be led to ceremonial altars, their blood staining the ground as an offering to the heavens. One particularly haunting account from the Zhou dynasty speaks of a grand river ceremony where dozens of slaves were drowned as an offering to river deities. These rituals, rooted in superstition and power dynamics, stand as a somber reminder of the extremes human societies can go to in their quest for spiritual security or dominance. After the chilling rituals of human sacrifices, we must confront another heart-wrenching facet of ancient Chinese slavery, the commercial transaction of human lives. Slaves, stripped of their individuality and humanity, became mere commodities, traded and sold as one would livestock or grains. The markets of the Tang dynasty around the 7th to 10th centuries CE were often filled with the somber scenes of families torn asunder by the cold calculations of trade. Imagine a mother clutching her child, suddenly forced to let go as a buyer decides he only wants one of them. Or siblings, having shared a lifetime of memories, brutally separated based on their perceived utility. These were not rare occurrences, but daily realities in slave markets. The pain of such separations was not just the immediacy of the loss, but the enduring uncertainty that followed. Would they ever hear their child's laughter again? Would they ever find out if their sibling was treated kindly or subjected to even more inhumane tortures? In the shadows of ancient China's grandeur lies a chilling narrative of cruelty and oppression. As we reflect on these harrowing tales, one must ask, what lengths might humanity go to in the name of power and control? This is History Uncharted. See you next time.